Welcome to this new Procreate tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to make a nice illustration. The brushes and the color palette are available and I will place a link in the video description, so it's totally free and you can get yours. First we have to create a canvas, and you can tap the plus here, then tap the plus there and create a canvas of 3000 by 3000 pixels. Then the color profile is set to RGB and then the second one here. Then you can tap Create and we have a nice canvas. First we're going to create a circle. So I go for the monoline brush, it's under calligraphy. The brush size is about 15%, doesn't matter exactly. And the brush opacity is set to 100%, that's important. For the color, I will go to the darkest color here, and then I can create a circle like this. I make a kind of circle. It will snap to an ellipse. When I place one finger on the screen, it will snap to a perfect circle. Then it says edit shape. Well, you can move it around like this. But I want it in the perfect middle, and there's another trick for that. First I can edit the size and then I can place it in the perfect middle. And therefore we can go to the arrow here. Make sure it's set to uniform. And you can choose the size. I think I will go for something like this. And then I want the circle to be in the perfect middle. Therefore I can choose snapping here and make sure this is switched on. And when I place it, I place my pencil outside the circle to manipulate. And when the orange lines appear, it will be in the perfect middle. You have to see both lines. Then I tap the arrow again and I can fill the outer parts. Next layer. I go to the layer menu, I tap the plus and place that layer underneath our circle. For the color, I will go to the second color here, the third color here, and I will go for the big soft airbrush. The brush size about, well, 36%, and the brush opacity about 33%. So I make a few strokes. Then I take the next color, the orangey one, and make a few strokes with that. Then I take the next one, this one. Then the yellow one. And you can manipulate a little with your pressure, because this brush is pressure sensitive, and when you press a little harder it will be more distinguished. When you press a little lower your pressure, it will be a little more transparent. I will add a little more of the orange. And a little more of the yellow. And in general, when you think there's a kind of color transition from there to there, and I'm ending not just in the middle of the circle, but a little below that. Then you can choose to blend it. It's not necessary, but you can do it. Therefore you can go to the magic wand here, then go to Gaussian blur, then layer, and then slide slightly to the right. And this will blend it. I will go for 7%. Then you can tap the magic wand here, and I'm going to create a new layer. And in this layer I'm going to create the sun. So I go for the yellow color, and I still have the same brush, but I want a smaller brush size of 12%, and the brush opacity is now set to 48%. And I create a circle again, let it snap. Place one finger on the screen to create a circle, and then I can choose edit shape and place him like this. And I tap the screen again and fill the sun. And we will add the sun later, but for now this is okay. Then I go for a next layer. I tap the plus, and this will be the water, and the horizon has to be perfect, straight and horizontal. And we can use the next trick. We can say select and choose a rectangle, and then choose a rectangle. Well, you can use the outer edges of the drawing, but you can make it a little smaller, it doesn't matter. Then I can fill it, and I will fill it with the with this one, the fourth. I grab the color and I place the color in the section. Then you can tap the select again, and we will work on the water later. Let's create a new layer. And for the color, I will go to the darkest color here. For the brush, I will go to the monoline brush, under calligraphy, and I create a kind of wobbly line. Then I close the shape. That's important. I grab the color and I place it. Now let's work on this area first. I'm going to add some texture to it. And for that, I don't want to go outside the edges. So I tap the layer menu and then choose alpha lock. And with alpha lock, we secure this layer. We can't go outside the pixels we already made. For the brush, I will go to the Dove Lake brush. It's under textures. For the color, I will go to the darkest color here, the brownish one. I set the transparency or the brush opacity to 33% and the brush size to 8%, and I create a little texture. Not too even. Then I go for a lighter color, this one, the third one in the row, and I take a bigger brush size of 15% and add even more texture. Not everywhere, just a few touches. And maybe when you imagine that the sun is shining, some areas will be lighter, some areas will be darker. go for a smaller brush size of 6% and I choose a lighter color. And add a few details. Then I go to the layer menu and create a new layer. And I will create the flamingo in that. So for the brush I will go to the flamingo brush. Choose a flamingo. The brush size, well, doesn't matter because we will manipulate with it. I go for 21% and I will go for the darkest color. Then I tap on the screen. Well, you can see it's way too small, but we can enlarge it. I go for the arrow here. I set it to uniform, otherwise the dimensions will change. And I make it a little bigger. Something like this. Then I tap the arrow again. Then I'm going to duplicate the flamingo. I say duplicate. Now I've created a next layer and they are on top of each other and I want to mirror it. So I can go to the arrow here and say flip horizontal. And of course I still have it set to uniform. And snapping is still on. I don't like the snapping now, so I switch off snapping. And I make this one a little larger. Maybe this one like this. Maybe this one can be a little larger too. So I go to that layer again. Tap the arrow here and make this one slightly larger. Then we can pinch these two and place them in one layer. It's not really important, but you can do it. Then I tap and create a new layer. In this layer I'm going to add, well, the foliage. It's called bamboo. The brush size is 20% first. Well, a little bigger. I go for 40% and add some foliage here. Then I lower the size to 14% and create a little more. Then I want a little foliage on this side too, but I want to manipulate it a little, so therefore I go to the layer menu, tap the plus and create some of that foliage. I tap the arrow, I set it to uniform and flip it horizontal. Then I can change the size the way I want. And I can choose warp. And with warp you can also manipulate a little. Then when you think it's right, you can tap the arrow here. Maybe you want to add some more. Alright, then I want some birds in the sky. So I go for the monoline brush again, under calligraphy, the same dark color. Well, you can add it in any layer you want, but sometimes it's smart to place it on separate layers. because in that way you can manipulate. You can always go back one step when you don't like the birds. Well, you can tap with 2 fingers and then it will be 1 stroke back. When you go tap with 3 fingers, it will appear again. It's like undo and redo. Well, then I have to manipulate a little with the sun. So I tap the layer menu and go to the sun. I want to darken this side of the sun, so I set this layer to alpha lock again, because I don't want to create a bigger and bigger sun. For the brush, I will go to the big soft airbrush again and I will choose a darker color. Let's go for this orange. I go for the big soft airbrush again and I go for a brush size of 20% and I work with a low pressure, and that way I can gradually darken this side of the sun. Maybe a little more, so I choose a darker color. And the brush opacity is still set to about 47%. Okay, then I want to create some waves and some dynamics on the water. So let's go to that layer and again set this layer to alpha lock. First I'm going to work on the value because I want the water to be darker near the horizon and some lighter towards us. For the brush, for the color, sorry, I will go to the darker color here. And for the brush size I will choose about, well, 17% and the brush opacity about 33%. And I lower my pressure, and that way I can create a color transition. And then I choose the lighter orange. And just a touch of yellow. So I work with low pressure. And when you think it's really difficult to work with low pressure, you can also choose a lower opacity. Well, then some waves. Under elements, there is an ocean brush. And for the color, I will start with, well, the really dark brown here. And first I'm going to create some waves. The brush size is set to 15% and the brush opacity is set to 50%. And I create some indication of waves. When I don't like one, of course I can go back by tapping with 2 fingers. Also higher the opacity for these waves, because because they are more nearby and the value, the contrast will be a little bigger. And then I want to create the reflection of the sun on the water. Well, maybe let's do a value in between. So I go for the orange color and add some waves with that one too. It's waves that are catching the light. Then I choose the yellow one. Okay, well, then there's a thing I want to adjust. I think I would love to make the sun a little smaller. So I can go to the sun layer and then choose the arrow here, set it to uniform, and make it slightly smaller, and you can play with the placement and you can even place it on the other side, but I think this is logical because the reflections on the water are here. Just slightly smaller. And there's another thing I want to adjust. I want to make a softer transition of the sun, so I can, therefore I have to deselect alpha lock. Otherwise I will only blend inside and I won't blend to the outside. So I deselect alpha lock and then I choose a magic wand, I choose Gaussian blur, I tap layer, and then I can slide slightly to the right. Then I tap the arrow again, and I think I like it this way. Well, I hope you liked it, and I hope you managed to follow the steps. If you want more of these tutorials and more in-depth tutorials, I hope to welcome you on my Patreon page, because I would love to create more tutorials like this, and well, hope to see you there. Have a nice day and let's color the world.